and welcome to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. We are the Who Dat Jedi. I'm Aaron, and joined with me, as always, Fredo and Dave. How we doing, guys?
Good.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good. So far, seems like hopefully we haven't pissed off the technology gods. Hopefully we have better internet connections. And, I guess I was telling Dave earlier, my upload speeds have been like in the gutter for about a week. And I restarted my computer and did an internet speed check before we started. So should be good to go. And they'll probably tank in 5 minutes, but that's the way it goes. So, and Dave is silent. I don't know. He muted himself. So, whatever he's trying to say is not coming through.
That's a self-inflicted wound.
Yeah, it was. I was going to say that I wouldn't take it too hard because Facebook was just down for a day. So, and they cost themselves billions of dollars by doing that.
But you know what's interesting, and I didn't realize how many credit card systems couldn't be used because Facebook was down. Like, there were a number of people, like I went yesterday that I needed to get a gift card for somebody, and I went to a local coffee shop, and they're like, well, our credit card systems are down, so even if you have cash, I cannot activate the gift card because that requires us having an internet connection and, connect to the credit card system. I'm like, okay, that's odd. Didn't think about it until apparently it wasn't the only store that it happened. It was a number of others, and apparently bouncing back to the fact that Facebook's connected to all banking institutions. They want to know where you're spending your money.
So you're saying that if the Russians want to take over the United States, they just need to take down Facebook and we will all crumble within moments?
That or we'll all get smarter, brighter, and better people. I don't know. It's 50-50.
We all move on. Actually, maybe.
I don't know, but I'm sorry. I was a teacher for 19 years. I still consider myself a teacher. I'm going to rant for a second. The people who were complaining last night that Monday night, I'm sorry, we're recording this on Tuesday. So who were complaining that Monday Night Football was delayed because there was lightning in the area, but they're in a covered stadium. It's like, it's not an enclosed stadium. Yes, there is a roof, but there are openings around the sides and lightning can go sideways. If anything in the last year and a half to 2 years has taught us anything, is that people need to go back to science class for the love of all that's holy. I mean, it's like one of my wife's students said they should just spray the vaccine in the air. Right? It's like
mix it into the nacho cheese.
Well, then I'm saying we need, if this is the way everybody's thinking about how nature and science works, then we seriously need to up our game in the sex ed department, because I'm sure there's a lot of things they don't understand about how things work. But anyway, I'm going to get off my rant here, but come on, folks. I mean, it's lightning.
That was another visit to Old Man Aaron's corner.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I'd like to be watching Monday Night Football and see a bolt of lightning strike, a player in the middle of the field, I mean, maybe not. So anyway.
We can change the name of this to Three Old Men Rant, and
Good news, everyone! I'm in terrible pain.
It's going to be more accurate, but yeah, it's absurd. When I was in school 25 years ago, science wasn't a big requirement, especially if you were studying the arts like I was. I was getting a BA.
Oh, so, same. I didn't have to. I had to take one science class in my undergrad.
And I remember even in high school, I avoided chemistry just because chemistry was intimidating.
Oh my God, chemistry! Chemistry is when I learned. Thank God for lab partners. And so, Michelle Francis, if you are out there, I know we're Facebook friends. I don't know if you listen to this podcast, but you helped me through chemistry. Anyway, go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry.
But my point is just that was the standard, and I think the standard now is much lower than that. You can take religious exemption to, pretty much anything they teach in science and get away with it. So
all right. So I have to tell this story, and I have to be careful about how I tell this story so that people don't get the wrong idea. So as a sophomore in high school taking biology class, my table partner partway through the semester, got pregnant. Not by me. Not by me. Wasn't mine.
Nobody was thinking that.
But here's the thing is that so as she is getting farther along, and I'm not a good science student anyway, but it's like she gets to the point where the baby started to kick for the first time, and I've never seen anything like that before. I mean, I was the youngest of all of my brother and sister, and all, so I never encountered really a pregnant lady with a baby. And so she's like, "Oh my God, Aaron, the baby's kicking." I'm like, so I'm totally distracted. And then she's like, "Oh, watch this," and she like pulls her shirt like tight against her belly, and you see the baby just go. Brrr. I'm just like, so whatever Mr. Chlorophyll up there is saying, it's like God knows what, because
more like Borophyll.
Yeah, so I was doomed in high school science from the get-go. Anyway, okay, well, but I did have my chemistry teacher. I wanted to be so good in chemistry because I saw this guy. He enjoyed his job so much. Whatever he was talking about was the most interesting thing and exciting thing on the planet to him. And I wanted to do so well for Mr. Kurt Wright, but I couldn't get chemistry to save my life. So anyway.
I'll just say right quick, as somebody who did have to take all those chemistry classes and their labs, there's nothing worse than having to take 3.5-hour chemistry labs and getting 1 hour's worth of credit. So in retrospect, I probably should have picked something in the arts, not science.
Yeah, those labs, that was in college, right? That was the worst because you'd have to take 3 hours for the class, and then you'd only get an hour credit for the lab, and you'd be in the lab like all week.
Yep, yeah, and if you break something, you're starting from scratch. No, they used to take like $60 deposits for like breakage fees and whatever. I'm never getting that back because you're gonna break stuff in there.
We're doing the exact opposite of what we were talking about at the beginning, which is like, let's encourage people to reinvest in the sciences, and here we are just like complaining about science.
Moving on, stay in school, kids.
So, yeah. Enough of Mr. Borophyll up there. This isn't the Who Dat Jedi Science podcast. But, I mean, like I said, I will say, Dave and I, we've admitted that we're dumb science people, but we understand how vaccines and lightning work. So,
there is that.
There's that.
Yeah. And we can also have Holly back on at some point if we want to talk science.
Yeah, we should. Well, let's get to some Star Wars trivia, shall we? And let's get our brain wrapped around. By the way, before we do the trivia tonight, we're going to be talking about how the prequels have influenced our perception of the original trilogy. So, again, it'll be kind of a free-flowing conversation. We got a couple bullet points we want to hit. Fredo's got some cool news. But first, let's get our brain wrapped around some Star Wars. All right. So, Dave, how many scout troopers pursue the Ewok who hijacks a speeder bike?
Oh, yeah, it's pretty much all of them, but I'm trying to remember exactly how many it was. 3?
The answer is 3. I would have said
Whoa.
2. I thought 2 went after the Ewok, and one guy, because there was 3 speeder bikes.
Stay behind.
And one guy got left behind. So, but I don't know. I don't know. We have to go watch Return of the Jedi now. Call shenanigans. You got it right. You get the points. So
that's what I'm going to say. I'm going to self-advocate here. It was 3.
The points are in the mail. All right. So, Fredo, same category. I don't know what the category is, but what? And there's quotes around this, so I'm going to do air quotes here. But what borrowed item does the medicine man brandish in the Ewok village? What borrowed item does the medicine man brandish in the Ewok village? And I'll give you bonus points if you can name said medicine man.
Well, I'm going to skip the bonus points because I can't remember it right now, but I'm going to guess a stormtrooper rifle. Is that the one that I'm thinking of, or am I thinking of something else?
Dave, do you know the answer to this? That's a nice way of saying Fredo's wrong.
Yeah. That's what I was getting at. Now, I was trying to think. It's like,
I don't remember him brandishing anything, but
Hey.
it's Logray, right? Is the medicine man?
The name is Logray, and
Yeah.
but what he was waving around was Luke's lightsaber. And
Really?
Okay.
fun
I'm thinking
story.
much later in the movie. I'm thinking after they beat the stormtroopers.
Fun story. In Omaha, Nebraska, back in about when did Shrek come out? Did Shrek come out like about 2000 or so? Is that about
1990, yeah, not about
ish?
2000. Yeah.
Okay, because there was a convention there called AlphaCon the first year, and I splurged and I bought the VIP ticket, and what that got me was I got to like have a meet and greet, and just long story short, I sat down and had a beer with Logray, the guy who played Logray. We just sat there and chatted about this, that, and the other. Then I actually sat down. My brother-in-law and I sat down with the guy who played Leatherface. So that was kind of interesting. Even though I've never seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I knew it was Leatherface. But I had a beer with an Ewok. So, all right. So I'll keep the same category. What color is the uniform of the TIE fighter pilot?
You mean Darth Vader?
Yeah, that's the fun. Yes, it's black. Yes, we've gone through this before. Every time troop at the 501st, if there are TIE pilots, people will always say, "Hey, it's Darth Vader," and then they get mad. So, all right, cool. Well, before I officially throw it to Fredo for the news, because the first bullet point is that the Lego Star Wars Terrifying Tales came out. Did you guys watch it?
Not yet.
I watched it from afar while my kids watched, so
Okay.
I sort of took some of it in.
Brittany and I
Were
watched
they
it.
terrified?
No, they were laughing.
Oh.
So I guess we won't get too in depth on this, but I will say there's some fun references that actually it was kind of funny. Brittany was really like into one of the references, and then she's like, because it was referencing a movie from the distant past, and she says, "You've never seen this movie before," and I was like, "No, I haven't." And they even modeled some characters after in the movie. So I won't get into it if you guys haven't watched the whole thing, so I don't want to spoil it. But like I said, there are some neat references. It's Lego, so it's cute. But yeah, so I don't know. What'd you have to say about it, Fredo?
No, I'm probably gonna try to watch it sometime this weekend after I get through with everything. But yeah, I was just simply thinking, I love the idea of doing these little Lego Star Wars specials on a yearly basis, picked around a different holiday. So yeah, Legos Terrifying Tales dropped this October 1st.
It's
I
interesting
think it's
because I saw an article today that somebody said because one of the tales is basically how Ben Solo becomes Kylo Ren, and they said that Lego did a better backstory for Ben Solo and transformation to Kylo Ren than the sequel trilogy did, and I almost have to agree. I almost have to agree.
I think
I'll
that
have to watch it.
The Lego shows are a little hit or miss for me. Sometimes it gets a little eye roll worthy, but I'm glad they exist, and that there are high points, like you just alluded to. Like there are times where they do a better job than some of the other story writers.
Well, I mean, know what
And
you're
it's a
getting
good.
into. Know what you're getting into. It's like
Yeah.
if you're gonna go, I mean, it's like music. If I want to be intellectually challenged, then I'm going to go get tickets to like Snug Harbor and watch Jason Marsalis play, or I'm gonna what have you. I'm gonna listen to probably some heavy jazz, or I'm gonna go listen to a symphony orchestra if I want to be challenged musically, intellectually. But sometimes you just want to have just fun, and just listen to fun music that's 3 chords and it's performed well, and it's just so that's what Lego Star Wars is.
Yeah, we make the McDonald's cheeseburger comparison a lot on this show, and it's exactly the same thing. It's like sometimes you want a McDonald's cheeseburger. There's nothing wrong with that.
And it's a pretty good way of giving something. And that's one thing that Disney has done really well with Disney Plus and Star Wars. They find a way to give each segment of the fan base something that they can like and appreciate and make theirs. Doesn't necessarily have to be the Mandalorian or the Book of Boba Fett. It could be Star Wars Visions. It could be the Lego specials. It could be in any of the behind the scenes stuff. There's a way to kind of give something to everybody so that maybe if you have, say, younger kids, that don't necessarily, you wouldn't necessarily want them watching Visions, for example, but you'd be okay with them watching Legos, like Star Wars. So
Like I said,
it's a smart tactic.
like I said, I enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed the first holiday special more, but I wasn't like looking at my watch while watching this. It was fun. It was fun.
So which holiday do you think that they'll do next year? Thanksgiving, President's Day,
You know,
holiday, 4th of July?
who knows? It just might become like, it's, the Charlie Brown Christmas special or the Thanksgiving special. They just may take it off for a while, and then every year it just comes back for, like, I don't know, is the Lego holiday special still on Disney Plus? We don't have to check right now, but I don't know.
I think so.
I mean, they got to make server space at some point, but
The
I don't know.
The Lego May Day special.
I don't know, but with Lego, I wouldn't be. And that's for another show. So anyway,
So speaking of other shows, just right quick, we got official confirmation from Disney Plus that Book of Boba Fett will premiere on December 29th this year. So we told it this December. Are you surprised that we haven't seen any trailers or any stuff for it yet, though? Or do you just think, they know that they got their audience? They don't have to do anything at this point.
so am I surprised that we haven't seen anything yet? No, because we have Disney Plus Day coming up. I mean,
True.
and it's like if they're December 29th, and it's only the beginning of October, and what Disney Plus Day is what, November 4th? Is that what we said? Or 8th or 5th, something like that. So, I mean, that's about the right amount of time to get people like excited about it. If beginning of October, if we see anything, then it's enough to make us forget about it. So
I think
and
it's
plus,
a really good.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's a good bet. It's good bet for November, because I think last year we got a trailer in October, if I'm thinking back correctly, and so it was about a month out ish. So you'd be talking about a month out for Disney Plus Day. I think that would be a really good bet.
Do you remember when we all used to feel excited and like it was a privilege to see a trailer or a little preview of an upcoming movie, and now it seems like the internet world is, why haven't we seen? Nah. It's like I've said it on this podcast before. I'll never forget that one of the first things I saw of Return of the Jedi was when we had like a book fair at school, and my friend ordered like a Return of the Jedi. It was before Return of the Jedi came out, so we were actually seeing, pictures of the unfinished Death Star and things like that, and it was really, really cool. But I mean, we didn't sit there and demand we need our trailer now. I don't know. It's interesting, and I think that's just a product of the internet and social media.
But I also think it's a question of it's a recognition of the competition that most media properties and products are with one another. I mean, just in the next 3 months, you're going to have everything from the latest James Bond movie, the adaptation of Dune, the next couple of Marvel movies, including The Eternals and Spider-Man. So you're going to get hit with a lot of stuff, and they're all vying for the same pot of money, so to speak. So it always surprises me, because it's understandable. I mean, they know they're going to, because they're not selling it the same way, and they know that, again, they have their audience. People are going to want to watch the Book of Boba Fett. But at the same time, it's interesting that they're going to, we're going to go this long and not have seen anything since the announcement. But you're right.
Kind of go back and I just looked it up. The trailer dropped last year in mid-September rather than October. So, uh, by that metric, we could expect to see it any time now. So who knows, really? But I still do think like there's some merit to that idea, Aaron. That there's another reason for people to get excited about Disney Plus and come to our service. So,
And you can be ultra. I was going to use a different word. You can really stick it to people by only releasing that trailer on Disney Plus for like a couple days before it goes to YouTube, officially. It's like you have it on Disney Plus Day, so everybody who's subscribed already gets to see the trailer, and then the next day or the day after, then you release it on YouTube and stuff like that. So, and if they actually say the Book of Boba Fett trailer is going to be on Disney Plus first, that might convince somebody to fork over the money that they were going to fork over in December in November. So all comes down to the mighty
it could
dollar.
be a good way to it could be a good way to time in saying, hey, if you want to catch up on everything, how did Boba Fett come back? Use this time between now and then to get caught up with the Mandalorian, and you'll know. Speaking of the Mandalorian, right quick, and this is going to take us a bit into the rumor mill. There was an article over on We Got This Covered. They were talking about a video uploaded by another YouTuber called Star Wars Mag, so giving credit where it's due. They're currently filming season 3 of The Mandalorian, even without Pedro Pascal, who's not filming The Last of Us for HBO. But according to this video, they saw actor Kevin McKidd, hanging around the California sound stages for The Mandalorian. For those of you who don't know Kevin McKidd, he's been on everything from Trainspotting, Grey's Anatomy, Dog Soldiers, Rome from HBO, but he's best known to Star Wars fans as the voice of Fenn Rau. Now, season 2 brought us Bo-Katan and Ahsoka Tano. Because season 3, which we suspect is going to feature heavily with the Darksaber and the Mandalorians, bring in Fenn Rau.
Well, and Fenn Rau, for listeners, is in Rebels. He was one of the protectors of Conquered Dawn. He was a Mandalorian, and he ended up being in Rebels. He ended up being the voice of. He ended up being kind of the Mandalorian historian. If we needed exposition for Mandalorians and their backstory, everything, he kind of provided it. So to me, and like I said, it's total rumor mill, but this is the kind of character that makes total sense to put into, here, because this isn't a character that people are going to be, giddy and jumping up and down that, oh yeah, hey, Fenn Rau is in The Mandalorian, but it makes sense. And it's going to be for people like us who have seen Rebels. And when we hear that voice and we know that character, it's like, oh, okay, cool. And so it binds the galaxy together.
Grain of salt. There's a really good chance that Kevin and Katie are good friends, and he would want to be on set to support his friend. So there's that. But I also feel like if you're doing the palace intrigue sort of thing with like who's the real leader, and let's have some backstabbing, and we're gonna see plotting, who's gonna take the throne, all that kind of stuff, which we sort of hinted at the end of season 2. He makes perfect sense to fold in. So,
well, that's the thing, is that it wasn't even at the end of season 2 of Mandalorian, but in Rebels, the last time that we, it was when Bo-Katan was holding the Darksaber. I mean, Fenn Rau was by her side saying, I will follow you to, wherever you go. So again, I think it's one of those things that it just makes sense. So.
No, but he still could fulfill the function you're describing, Aaron, of being the Mandalorian historian, the lore keeper, the person who does the background exposition for all the cool stuff that you suspect the Mandalorians have done. He could still do that in season 3 very well. And depending on how they want to portray him, he doesn't even have to be in Mandalorian armor. He could be kind of like an elder statesman at this point.
Yeah.
Elderly. He's not that old, but if they wanted to go that route, and he didn't necessarily want to be in Mandalorian armor like Katie Sackhoff all the time, he could do that.
No, like I said, I just think this makes sense. I saw this story this morning. It was like, and if somebody's going to, this is also, yeah, you're right. We get into rumor mills and stuff like this, and sometimes you see just the dumbest stories on the planet because people want, just they're trying to get clickbait, right? Mm-hmm. But Fen Rao in Mandalorian season 3 is not this. It's not clickbait. You know what I mean? It's not going to make people just go diving into, it's so anyway. So that's why I give it a little bit more credence. It makes sense. And it's like, why are you going to, roll the dice on Fen Rao, but whatever.
Right. If you wanted to get clickbait, you'd say Ezra Bridger or Grand Admiral Thrawn in season 3 of The Mandalorian. That would get you lots of clicks. It would be further from the reality you suspect The Mandalorian season 3 is going to hit, but it will get you some clicks. Whereas Fen Rao feels he's not that big of a character that he's going to necessarily move thousands of fanboys to, some spam us website or a video. But at the same time, he's somebody who's established enough that people will recognize him. People who know and love Rebels, they're going to be like, yes, we want to see him. So, again, makes sense. This next story, actually, I'm going to go from one rumor mill to one possible rumor, but nothing yet. Actually, it's more of a request. So Empire Magazine was doing an interview with the cast and crew of the Marvel's upcoming The Eternals, which is being directed by Academy Award winner Chloe Zhao. So during the interview, which apparently happened last year before she became Academy Award winner director Chloe Zhao, they asked her about Star Wars because she mentioned it about 5 or 6 times as being close to her heart. And here's her the question and then the answer from the interviewer. He says, you've mentioned Star Wars a good couple of times now in this call. It's obviously really formative for you. So then he kind of establishes the big blockbuster, huge franchise of the Eternals. She asks him, would you like to direct a Star Wars movie? And she goes, I have to tread very carefully with what I say here, but yes, let's just say it's a world I have so much reverence for because it was such an important part of my life. So let's just put this out there. Kathleen Kennedy, Chloe Zhao, give her a Star Wars movie.
There'd be worse choices to pick from, and I think that we are going to hear that over and over and over. We've heard that from so many directors already. This is that generation. They grew up on these movies. And so for them, it'd be like a lifelong dream to be able to direct one. And, some directors are very understandably, they would shy away from that because it's too big of a responsibility or they've moved on to other interests, what have you. But this is kind of a repeating story that we hear from these directors now, the accomplished directors now that say they would like to be involved in this universe.
Well, and here's an interesting story that's moving side by side with this is that Mina Massoud has been kind of playing coy with, is that the right name? Playing coy with whether or not he's going to be Ezra Bridger. That hasn't been confirmed. And he was in an interview saying, I was just, because I was listening to the Resistance broadcast it's from Star Wars Newsnet. It's a great Star Wars podcast. And they were talking, he was saying, I was just manifesting there, basically, I want to play Ezra Bridger, so I'm going to make some noise on the internet, say I want to be Ezra Bridger. And then he kind of started, they asked him a question. So, the people who were interviewing him asked him a question. He said, well, I can't really talk about that. So he kind of showed his hand that, I've been hired because unless you've signed an NDA, you're not going to say, well, I can't talk about that. You're going to talk about whatever you want to. Anyway, so it's kind of like my Irish band is we wanted to play the Kansas City Irish Fest. And so I told our fans on our mailing list, I said, everybody email the Kansas City Irish Fest and tell them they need to hire the Wild Clover Band. And they just got hammered with emails. And to the point where the guy who got all those emails, like, who the hell's the Wild Clover Band? And they're like, we got to hire this band just because they have the chutzpah to, to do this. And so that happened. So now, I mean, if you're a director, I mean, nobody's going to walk up and just give you anything. But if you're accomplished at something, you say, yeah, I want to do Star Wars. Then you're going to have people at Lucasfilm going, oh, we never thought about that, but yeah, this would be pretty good. I mean, so I think, again, it's this age of social media, this age of, people being their own, marketing wing, I suppose. I mean, they have to, you just can't wait around for them to say that we're going to give you the Star Wars gig. I mean, you just have to say, I want it.
I think Rosario Dawson did the same thing. If we're thinking of examples, so she sort of campaigned for that role and got it. And again, that may have been a little cagey on her part. She might have already had it sewn up, and they were just floating.
Well, that was a little bit. There's still an argument. There's our question about chicken and egg here, because it's like somebody created an image of her as Ahsoka Tano, and then that's when she went, yeah. But that might be a pretty good idea, But
this is the same kind of thing, though, because this could be a chicken or the egg situation where it's like she may be cagey because she already knows something.
Yeah, but I think also, I mean, it makes sense for people to just say, I think I could direct a Star Wars movie. I want to direct a Star Wars movie, and people are going to go, you got to make some noise, and then you might get your foot in the door. So,
well, and I think in some ways, because it's interesting that she's saying this as she's directing Marvel's next big gamble, because the Eternals are a big gamble for Marvel because they're not an established property. They're to team up. It's got some kind of weird sci-fi, spacey, 70s vibes kind of thing going on. So it's gonna be different. It's like like the biggest gamble they've thrown out there since Guardians of the Galaxy, which was another weird, trippy, space-heavy team-up movie. But I don't know if either of you saw Nomadland, which is the movie that she won the Academy Award for. She's shown a very, not only a good eye, but a good sense of heart and of storytelling. So that's why I'm be willing to give her, I'll be happy if they give her the opportunity. And I think that's something that the folks at Lucasfilm have to kind of almost go like, okay, not just stick with, there's going to be some pressure to stick to tried and true filmmakers, but taking a chance on somebody like Taika Waititi, or taking a chance on somebody like Patty Jenkins, or taking a chance on somebody like Chloe Zhao gives you the opportunity to branch out your storytelling in ways that open up Star Wars even further. Because that's really what they need to be doing, is they need to start thinking, okay, how do we make Star Wars that, self could perpetuate for the next 50 years or whatever. And the crowd goes mild.
Yeah.
So so she says she wants to. Fingers crossed, we'll see what they say. I'll finish up right quick news, and this is less the news about what's happening, because October is, I don't know if any of y'all did this when you were in school, Star Wars Reads Month.
I trooped at Star Wars Reads Day. Yep.
Well, now it's a month. And so Disney is donating 10,000 books to, I believe it's called First Book, which is a nonprofit organization that provides new books and educational resources to educators who serve kids in underserved communities.
They're donating 10,000 copies of the novelization of The Rise of Skywalker. that they have stuffed back in a storeroom somewhere. I'm kidding, folks.
But then on top of that, for every book, if you go to shopdisney.com, so Disney's online store, and you buy a book from them through December 31st of this year, Disney will donate a book to First Book. So you go there, you decide to pick up a couple of Daniel Jose Older's or Justina Ireland's books from the High Republic, hey, they'll donate a couple of books. You decide to buy the novelization to Rise of Skywalker 3 times, they'll donate 3 books. So at least that, it's not, we're always all in favor of people reading, and picking up books and expanding their minds. So anything to that, we applaud.
I agree with the basic idea here, and it's a good thing. But I also want to make clear that they have a terrible record right now in how they treat their authors, especially their legacy authors. And I want that to be top of mind for people as they look at things like this. And it's like it shouldn't taint everything that they do, but it should be something that we're all aware of.
What do you mean? This take 1 minute to explain that.
Oh, I mean, clearly the Splinter and the Mind's Eye stuff, in
That
particular,
got settled. Yeah.
yeah, um, that was just shouldn't have ever gotten to that point. And again, it's top of mind for me because I think that they've run into a lot of those issues lately with their actors now, with Scarlett Johansson, and just this idea of maybe doing the bare minimum when it comes to taking care of the creative forces behind the economic engine that is the big mouse. So um, I think ultimately I'm in favor of them doing what's right. So this is a good thing, and I think that's good. But I also think like, geez, like take care of your authors, please.
And I think just to piggyback of what you're saying, it's one of the apprehensions that anyone should have with media conglomerates just hoovering up intellectual properties left, right, and center, is that it can be quite easy for them to become the only game in town, and thus, hey, we're giving you what we're gonna give you in order to work with our toys because they're ours now. So
Well, it's very
um,
interesting that we're getting, we're getting back to the almost the patronage type of type of a
model.
thing where, like, Handel and Mozart, and they all wrote that they were hired to write music for parties and things like that, and that's how they made their bread, and now, and so they could say, I want, don't, you can write whatever you want, but most of the time it was, I want this. And so now, yeah, I mean, actors, authors, it's like, yeah, if you're gonna, you may want that Star Wars gig, but Mickey Mouse has become your patron. So, but anyway, so that might be a top.
So
That sounds like a topic for another episode. So somebody jot that down, and maybe we switch gears now over to our topic of the night, and how the prequels. Now, Dave's notes say enhanced. I think maybe we could switch it to influenced or affected our perception of the um, uh, original trilogy. I just throw that little caveat out there because I think there's some things that definitely influence the way I look at the original trilogy, but didn't necessarily enhance it. That doesn't mean I'm going to be negative the whole time, because
I think there's a wide list of negative things you could pick up on too. There's like, well, this thing affects my enjoyment of those films, and I think like that's kind of the thing that you hear from people. And so, like, I think the spirit of this discussion is the opposite of that, in trying to highlight the ways that the prequels actually make those movies
enriched.
a little enriched and make
yep.
them a little more enjoyable for us.
So you want to kick us off here? What you're going after?
Well, I think the main storyline is always going to be the main kind of thrust of this, and it's like, well, okay, so Luke's story, and by extension Anakin's story, and by extension how that affects the galaxy at large, and like that, all of that has been enriched
Well,
immensely.
a huge shift, because the original trilogy, it was all about the redemption of Anakin Skywalker. I mean, yeah, it was Luke's hero journey, but at the end of the day, it was about, if we look to the Return of the Jedi, it's about the redemption of Anakin Skywalker. So the prequels now made that a bigger story, and it was the fall and redemption of Anakin Skywalker. So it created that bigger arc, So I would agree with you that totally enhances that. And that
Well,
then
and I
that
guess
really, I'm sorry, that really gets into then, when you look at it that way, that's why it's like you really do need to think about what order you want to watch this in or show it to somebody, so that, because if you
That's
look at
another
it,
episode we've been talking about doing soon.
yeah, I mean,
Recommended watch order.
if you're talking about, if you're thinking about just the, redemption of Anakin Skywalker, then it makes sense to do a flashback. But if you're talking about the fall and the redemption, then it makes sense to start in episode 1 and just go through to 6. I don't know.
Mhm. Well, what's interesting is if you see it in the way we saw it, theatrical release, you didn't even realize that it's about the redemption of Anakin Skywalker till the
Return of
last
the Jedi.
chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah, till Return of the Jedi, when Luke has to make that decision as to whether he's going to confront and kill his father or confront and try to redeem him. And that's all in the background. That's one of the smart things that Lucas and his writers and directors and people who worked alongside him, like Rick Kasdan, Irvin Kershner, Richard Marquand did, was that it was always in the background. I mean, how many times do you hear the word father mentioned around Luke? Since episode 4, since basically just about when he gets introduced, I think. But it was never. You're aware that there's something there, but you didn't realize what it was until the big reveal in Empire, and it's not until Return of the Jedi that you get hit with the, oh no, what is Luke? What is Luke's choice going to be? And it's at that point that you have to come to, well, okay, wait a minute. There's a bigger story there regarding his fall, since he needs to be redeemed. The prequels gave you, all that information. They gave you all the knowledge as to who Anakin was, the way he was, why he fell, etc. So, if you watch them numerical order, I think you do get that, like I said, that deeper understanding that that the core of the Star Wars story is one of redemption. Whereas if you see it theatrically released, that doesn't come to the forefront at all. Not until you realize that that's in there.
Yeah, I've said it, and again, I don't mean to be. I've said it before on this podcast. I wish that they wouldn't have they wouldn't have paid so much attention to the reason or made such a big deal of the reason he turned to the dark side was because he was in love with Padme. I mean, yeah, on one side that shows how big of a heart he has, but it doesn't jive with, Obi-Wan Kenobi saying, he's more machine man than man, twisted and evil. Even though he was speaking literally, he was also obviously going, very much figuratively there. And because he wanted, so I don't know. So I mean, I'm not saying it negatively affected me, but it does change the way that I look at Darth Vader in the original trilogy now. Totally does.
I think regardless of the execution of how things unfolded in episodes 1 through 3, we now see a more complete picture of that character. And so if you're watching them in order now, and I say in order 1 through 6, when you go from 3 to 4 and you see Vader in the hallway looming over who you now know is his daughter, you're like, your brain goes to Anakin right away, especially if you're doing a marathon. You're like, I've been watching these, and now it's like, oh gosh.
That's part of a Star Wars drinking game, is anytime Vader's around one of his kids, then you're supposed to drink.
I think so. Or any character he should know, and maybe doesn't, but maybe kind of does. We're gonna touch on another one of those here in a couple minutes, but it's I think that's at the heart of what's going on with that character now, is that now you can't just see him as this faceless thing, right? This entity. And the ending of Return of the Jedi for me is enhanced because of that. It's like you said, now you can't really separate the two. I can't separate Anakin from that moment where he saves his son. And um, prior to that change occurring of the prequels being made, that was always a very powerful moment. But it didn't like bring me to the verge of tears, and now it does. In the same way that, like, if I'm watching Mary Poppins, and the dad is like coming around to spend time with his kids at the end of the movie, it's like, and again, I'm a dad now, so it's just like, just tears streaming down my face because it's just like, I get punched right in the stomach.
Cats in the cradle and the silver spoon.
It's
Little boy.
That song.
Yeah, I know, right? But okay, so I want to take it, so you talk about the main storyline, Luke and his family. I know we're talking about the prequels and to the original trilogy, but then if you add the sequel trilogy into this, then it becomes this whole, the Skywalker and Palpatine,
dance
thing. The Palpatines become part of that, but that's not for tonight. So yeah, you're absolutely right. You can't, and it's funny because we're now also looking, everything makes sense after you've seen all 6 movies, right? I would still love to sit down with somebody, and I know a couple people that we could do this with, but just to walk through each movie and then just to see their natural reaction, to, the progression of Darth Vader, for example. Because I really do think that while, yes, the original trilogy was Luke's story, the prequels made it Anakin's story.
Very much so.
Yeah, and it's the other big aspect that we're probably going to talk a little bit about here too is this mirroring thing that goes on between the two, and that enters into the picture too, because you can see this story unfold for Luke, the original trilogy, and then you see it unfold for Anakin in a very different way. And so now, if somebody comes into this thing fresh and they see it 1 through 6, they start with 1, they get to 3, they get their minds blown by the fact that the hero turns to evil out of the blue. Again, that's a critique, that's fair, but turns to evil halfway through the 3rd movie, and you're just like, your mind is blown. Now where's the story going from here? And then you get to see the same thing, the same journey unfold with his son, and so by the time you get to 6, you're just like, don't turn to the dark side, don't turn to the dark side, and you get to see things play out.
I would also say, kind of playing off something Aaron said, because of the way that the original trilogy feels, the arrival of the Emperor at the end kind of feels like, okay, who the heck is this guy? Whereas if you watch them, the prequels, first, full well when he steps off that shuttle in Jedi that there's plans afoot, that there's some sort of machination happening, that they're going to entrap Luke in some kind of way. And so when you see those moments in the throne room between Palpatine and Luke, you almost go like, kid's got no chance here because we know what he can do. We know how he can play people.
Which then again, okay, so again, not to, the other side of that coin is that, the first time we saw Jedi, and all of a sudden it's like, holy crap, he's shooting lightning out of his fingers, and it's like, oh my God, who is, because we know it's the Emperor and he's coming off the shuttle and everything, but all of a sudden he's doing all this, bad McClunky stuff. And if you were, again, I'm just assuming, but if you were to be a new watcher and by the time you get to episode 6 and you see, oh, that's that dude. Oh, he's using Force Lightning. We've seen that, you know? So it kind of, so again, I think that gets into what order do you want? I don't know. It's just,
I would read it Fredo's way. I think if as a new viewer, I would be like, oh gosh, they're in trouble because this guy like beat Yoda. He beat everybody. He owns the galaxy. He's the bad mother effer who killed Sam Jackson. You know, like this is bad news for our heroes. But you know, like even if you watch it the original way, right, that we did 4 through 6, and you go back 1 through 3, 1 through 3 does give us more Palpatine, which
whole heck
is
of a lot
always
of
a good
Palpatine.
thing.
So I want to throw in a kind of a fun one that this has really changed the way, and from the minute that I saw this scene after seeing the Phantom Menace, this is just kind of one of those fun ones. In The Empire Strikes Back, Vader stopping Boba Fett from shooting Chewbacca in Cloud City. And because who's Chewbacca carrying on his back but C-3PO, the droid that Anakin created. That does affect that scene. It makes you go, things that make you go, it's like, I know there are protocol droids all over the place, but, it's like that scene now takes on a whole different meaning because, and that is just a way that the prequels has affected the original trilogy. Did Vader know, how all these things are playing out? Then it makes you wonder, is it an accident that 3PO and R2 just happened to land on Tatooine in Luke Skywalker's lap? I don't know. That's, but let's first take the Vader stopping Boba Fett from killing Chewbacca with C-3PO on his back. I don't know. What do you guys think about that one?
I mean, it's a fun thing. I don't know how much time I'd be willing to spend on it, but it is fun thing. I think we all like saw that pointed out at some point or realized it on our own, and it was like, and those are the fun connections. It's like Anakin has interacted with like a lot of these people. It's like, is it a good thing that he had interacted with C-3PO? A lot of people will debate you on that. It's like, well, this galaxy is very small, isn't it? But
well, it makes you wonder if that was the. We'd have to talk to have to go back and talk to George Lucas, and he'd probably make something up. But to me, it almost seems like somebody was like, "Hey, remember that scene in Empire? Let's make it so Anakin, created C-3PO, and then it's one of the, because otherwise they could have introduced a protocol droid at any time, But anyway, yeah, we don't have to spend too much time. But that is an instance where, that scene just becomes, at first, it's kind of like, that's kind of interesting that Vader's keeping him from just, laying waste to everybody. But now, because he's holding his pet dog on his back, it becomes, a little different.
Yeah, I think what this is one of the things that the prequels do. When you first see that moment, originally seeing it, all I've ever thought was, okay, Vader did not want Boba Fett to start shooting up the place, even if it was just to shoot Chewbacca, who was about to go on a tear. So I didn't even think about anything beyond that. The fact that Episode 1 introduces C-3PO as Anakin's creation shifts the meaning of that moment entirely, which is one of the things that the prequels do to a lot of the stuff within the original trilogy. All of a sudden, we all laugh about the Luke and Leia kiss in Empire, and we didn't need to go long to recontextualize that when the next movie kind of told us, yeah, that was kind of creepy.
So
but that's the kind of things that the prequels do, is they allow you to see both deeper connections and to reassess what you thought you knew was going on.
I can dovetail off of that with another one that immediately springs to mind for me, which is the asteroid chase, um, which uh, culminates in them, stuck to the side of a star destroyer and then floating away in the space garbage. And who sees them do this? Boba Fett. And it's because he had seen that happen in a previous chase through an asteroid belt with Obi-Wan, who turned the power off on his ship and attached himself to the side of an asteroid. And Boba Fett put one and one together on that, and it's like, oh, I've seen this move before. I know what this move is. And like it's adds another layer to that scene later on, and it's fun.
Now, I do want to say, I think one of my favorite scenes in the original trilogy is actually the exposition that Obi-Wan gives in his hut about your bullet point on here of, the Republic, and again, Anakin betraying and murdering Luke's father. And I've always liked that scene because you're like, what's the Republic? What are Jedi? What are, I remember just all these things. And so if you've never seen, you can go on YouTube and find it. I don't know if Star Wars, if it was Lucasfilm, the creator, or just a fan, but they took that exposition scene and they then put clips from the prequels in there when he talks about the Clone Wars, and you see, clips from Attack of the Clones, and he talks about Anakin betrayed him, and he show Anakin and Obi-Wan's fight from Episode 3. It's an awesome clip, and now that scene gives me chills now. Because Obi-Wan is really playing a poker face. He's almost given Luke everything, but there's some serious PTSD in that whole exposition, that whole monologue.
And like a few seconds before that, he encounters R2-D2. I don't seem to recall ever owning a droid. Like he's playing this whole thing cagey, and like now there's a different layer there. He's not telling the whole truth. Just a version of it that he thinks Luke can handle of it in that moment. But to circle back, that was the teaser trailer for Revenge of the Sith, and it was incredible. And it made a huge impact on me when I first saw it. I was like, this is perfect. This is what I want from the prequels.
For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic, before the Dark Times, before the Empire. A young Jedi named Darth Vader, who was a pupil of mine until he turned to evil, helped the Empire hunt down and destroy the Jedi Knights. Vader was seduced by the dark side of the Force. Lord Vader.
Yes, Master.
Rise.
We have differing opinions on how good a job Revenge of the Sith ultimately did. But it's like that, just that scene was the promise, right? Of all this stuff that had happened and occurred and laid the groundwork for what was going to happen later on. And yeah, it's remarkable. I love it. I love the character. I love his interaction with Darth Vader later in the movie, where they're fighting. And again, now that scene has more subtext, because now we know what happened between the two of them. We've seen it. That was always like rumored, like that was one of those playground things when we were kids, right? It's like they fought on a volcanic planet or whatever, and like, how do you know that? It's like, well, I read it in this magazine or whatever, and it's like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. And like, so like there's a generation of kids who were brought up on these stories, and then to just like, now they were real. They were affirmed. This stuff happened. And so it was, yeah, there's more gravitas now for that character in general, and I always loved him, and I love him even more now.
You get an opportunity to see. It's interesting seeing him, and it's in some ways it's kind of something that I think doesn't hit us as kids, hits us more as adults. Is that at one point the generation before us, namely our parents, our grandparents, our uncles, those kind of aunts, they were young ones and they didn't necessarily know everything once. And sometimes they were rebellious and reckless and fun seeking and outgoing. And, you get to meet them when they're more solid, more stable, by and large. I mean, some of us still are fun seeking. But point being, getting to see Ben as young Obi-Wan and seeing the kind of stuff that he was getting into, seeing the kind of stuff that he was willing to do, seeing him as a young Padawan and then later as a young Jedi Master. It's interesting because and there's one aspect where casting was so excellent because Ewan McGregor nailed a lot of the mannerisms, the tone, the way of speech of Sir Alec Guinness, and you seamlessly transition from that character to the one you meet in episode 4.
But to another point, however, the prequels have really affected, has made Obi-Wan and Yoda more flawed characters.
Mm-hmm.
In the original trilogy, if you just watch 4, 5, and 6, you think that they are, they're all that in a bag of chips. They're perfect, and you now see, with Obi-Wan now, saying what I told you was true from a certain point of view. When you see that for the first time, you're like, yeah, okay. And now you're like, you are like still playing this song, so it really has affected how I view those two characters more flawed than I did when I first saw the first 4, 5, and 6.
I think for me that's a welcome change. They're more relatable.
They're more interesting.
Yeah.
One thing I was interested because somehow I found myself watching some bit of Empire, and it's the scene where Luke is choosing to leave his training and go save his friends in Dagobah. That moment where Yoda's chiding Ben like, "I told you he's reckless," that kind of thing. And it just hit me that point how desperate they really were for this to work out with Luke. It didn't, normally when I used to see that movie, it's like, okay, yeah, they're kind of disappointed in Luke, but no, in some ways the disappointment is more on, my God, we've been waiting for this chance for so long, we've sacrificed so much for this, and there it goes.
And here's the thing, though, because we got the prequels, so why are they? Is it for the glory? Is it for the saving of the galaxy, or is it for the saving of their reputations and saving the Jedi reputation? You know what I mean? Because one of the underlying themes of the prequel trilogy is the vanity and smelling that the Jedi were all smelling their own farts, and so again, now you're looking at when you bring up that scene, I'm thinking, yeah, and okay, so now I'm looking at that like, do they really want this to look out so that they can save their reputation, or are they really wanting to defeat evil? I mean, Anakin in episode 2 and 3 kind of have a point about the Jedi.
I mean, like I think we've all touched on that one. I like Fredo's interpretation of like desperation, like, oh God, there he goes. We're not done yet. Like, this is the guy, and he left. What are we gonna do if he dies?
Right? Because they had one plan, and the plan was you keep the kid away from everybody for as long as it takes, and you bring him in, you train him, get him ready, go battle your dad and kill him. And don't tell him he's your dad because he might not want to kill him.
Yeah, and then he leaves early, and you're like, well, there goes that plan.
And they're going, no, but we got a plan. And Yoda's like, no, we got a plan B. Never mind the fact that plan B might be dying on Dagobah.
other couple of things, like since the timer went off, I just wanted to touch on the rhyming a little bit more. There's a lot of examples of it. I think some of it's intentional, some of it's not so intentional, because I think the fans we like to see it. We watch these movies over and over and over, and it's like, oh, that rhymes with that. Maybe. Some of this stuff's really obvious though. Like I think the end battle of the Phantom Menace is meant to mirror the end battle of Return of the Jedi. I think like they're bookends, right? This is the point. We end in the same place where we sort of began. And I think like that's a really deliberate choice.
Well, and to that point, I throw a little personal story in here. Because some people really have a problem with that that there is, it's like the same thing over here as it was over here. But and I don't think she would mind me saying this. One time Brittany got a psychic reading done, got a tarot card reading done, and the psychic said to her, this is not Britt and my first go around, that we've connected in past lives, and they said that actually, like it's feasible that the three of us have, interacted before in a past life. That's why. So we keep gravitating towards, one another. So to go through some of the same song and dance, even though it's not the same person, I get it, but that's kind of a cosmic theory. So
I don't discount that as being valid. And I think like from a storytelling perspective, this is a really smart thing to do because you can compare and contrast. And again, like the point of it is like by the end of it, you're supposed to feel like Luke is going to turn to the dark side like his dad.
Right.
Everything is awful. We're seeing the same thing happen over and over again, and we can't change anything. We can't break the cycle, and instead it happens. And so, like, I think every time that they can like reinforce that point in the movies, they will. And again, this like, well, we're going to show you a thing, and then we're going to show you the same thing but slightly different, right? And so, like, it is the same but not quite. And so you get these little kind of hints that like maybe there's a chance, maybe this is going to unfold the way that we want it to. And I think that's like the larger point of it, right? And so because of that, and because of the fact that I think that it is intentional, I love it. That's one of the things about the saga that I just enjoy immensely. And this is why I can watch the prequels. Some people find them unwatchable. Not me. I love watching those movies because it's like I'm constantly thinking about the original trilogy and like where this is all headed and ultimately what's going to happen at the end of the day. And I guess like that's part of the enjoyment that I get out of it. But again, I guess the point that we were trying to make somewhat is that the original trilogy, it can work in reverse too. Mm-hmm. And that you can watch the original trilogy now and get more out of those movies than you might have gotten originally because the prequels exist.
And one last one from me, that again, my whole thing has always been people who complain about the storyline of the prequels weren't paying attention, because there is a line in A New Hope: how will the Emperor maintain control without the bureaucracy? So that line is paid off with all of the bureaucratic nonsense that's going on in episodes 1, 2, and 3, and how he needed that to gain control and needed to work the system. So if anybody didn't think that episodes 1, 2, and 3 was going to be about politics, then you weren't paying attention. I mean, now it's paid off in episode 4. So I see that scene, hear that line now in that scene. It makes me, it takes on a little bit more meaning for me.
Just to finish off, Mark, it's something that I know Lucas was trying to stress, particularly with episode 3, was the idea of the fall of the Republic, that it wasn't that it fell, but that it was willingly given up. People didn't the Emperor didn't Jedi mind trick the entire galaxy into making him the Emperor. He didn't gain power by
Only
just
Jar
tricking
Jar
people.
Binks.
Right, exactly. Exactly. So people willingly conceded out of their fear, out of their hatred, out of their apathy, out of their greed. They willingly turned power over to this guy, not realizing the depths of what he was willing and able to do. And they all got played. And in some ways, there's a lesson there that Lucas is trying to hammer to audiences. But sometimes, okay, it can be a big hammer, but at the same time, doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't need to be reminded now and then that, usually people willingly give up of themselves, without being cognizant of what they're giving up.
That's a really good point. The one other thing that I would bring up would be R2-D2, and like how he made that choice at the end of Revenge of the Sith not to have his memory wiped. A very deliberate choice, a very pointed choice. We're going to tell you here, and we're going to wink at the audience. This droid knows everything. He's your narrator, and he's seen it all. And there's just a lot of fun, like what if your mind really begins to wander? Is like, oh, well, he's seen all these things. Like, how does that impact this scene later on?
Well, I mean, it really does, because when the escape pod, R2 is the one that brings them into the escape pod. I mean, and he knows well what's down on Tatooine. He knows that he may not know. Well, he probably knows Luke there as well, but he knows that Obi-Wan is down there. And so, yeah, I mean, and I still love, he's the poster boy of snitches get stitches. I mean,
I was going to say, I'm just waiting for one movie to pull back, like from the final shot to a blue hologram, and it'll just be R2 showing the hologram, kind of telling you that he was telling the whole story all along. And then Iris out, directed by.
Yeah, well, everybody got so ticked off at The Force Awakens because he's under a sheet for that entire movie. Well, if he's not under a sheet and shut down for the entire movie, there's no movie. It's like, where's Luke? Oh, he's over here.
Over here.
All right, well, good. So, cool. Well, hey, if let us know how you feel the prequels have enhanced your viewing of the original trilogy. I stayed positive, so you can stay positive. But let us know what you think. There are different scenes that take on new meaning after seeing episodes 1, 2, and 3. Another thing, jot this down, Dave, because I think another thing would be to look at other movie franchises that went and tried to do a prequel, and did they accomplish what Star Wars did, or did they do it better? Because really Star Wars came up with the whole prequel concept. I mean, as a huge thing. So maybe looking at that and say, did they get it or didn't they get it? That might be an interesting episode. But until then, we didn't talk about the Saints because week 1 was yay, week 2 was week 3 was yay, week 4 was meh. So
it's a roller coaster.
We told you a long time ago, folks, this is the way the season's going to go. So just make sure the fridge is stocked with beer. And since it is October, make sure you have Oktoberfest type beer, right, Dave?
That's right.
No IPAs.
Roast.
Yeah. So
Roast.
Anyway, with that, we will say who dat.
Who dat?
Do you guys need a bigger cue?
Roast.
And study up on your science. Have a good week.
McConkey.